leadership provided to this city of New York and to the United States of America by this man, our guest, the Mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani. Mr. Mayor, welcome.
Thank you, Tim.
I want to create, if I can, for your children and the children of America, an oral history of what you've been through these last 10 days, 2 weeks. Tuesday, September 11th, 8:48 a.m. Where were you and how did you hear what happened to the World Trade Center?
I was at the Peninsula Hotel in Midtown Manhattan finishing a breakfast. And I was leaving to go down to City Hall. So I was going to head in that direction. And before I left, as I was saying goodbye, my counsel, Dennison Young, got a call and came over to me and said that the World Trade Center, there was a fire at the World Trade Center, that they thought it was a twin-engine airplane that had hit the top of the World Trade Center. And we said goodbye, and I said to the police officers, we got to head down there, get as much information as you can. Now I've been through 500 emergencies, 400 emergencies, TWA Flight 800, West Nile virus, collapses of buildings, major fires in which we've tragically lost 3 firefighters.
So you weren't yet thinking terrorism. You're thinking a wayward pilot, a heart attack.
I can't tell you how often there have been threats that we've responded to, or things I've known about that were stopped, and the first report was more in the nature that it was an accident. How could an accident like this happen? How could any plane hit the World Trade Center? How could a plane get that close to do it? So we got in my van, the 2 police officers that are with me, and Dennison Young, my counsel, and I, and we proceeded right down Fifth Avenue in a direct line to go to the World Trade Center. And then we put the radio on, and we started making telephone calls to the police commissioner, the fire commissioner, my deputy mayors, this particular case, Joe Loda, who happened to be at City Hall and headed over there. And we've been through this so often, we have a routine that we follow, which is I go to the command center, either of the fire department or the police department. In this case, I knew there would be both, a police and a fire command center. And on the way down, I wanted to make sure that we would get the press, because we'd have to communicate. And as we were driving down, I got about 2 blocks north of St. Vincent's Hospital. And for the first time Denny and I saw the World Trade Center. And I could see the smoke and flames coming out of it, the top. But I still couldn't tell how bad it was. When we passed St. Vincent's Hospital, the first sign that I had that this might be much worse than I realized was I saw 4 or 5 doctors and 4 or 5 nurses from St. Vincent's Hospital already in scrub greens with stretchers outside of the hospital, virtually on the street. Waiting. Nobody had arrived there yet, but waiting, which said somebody must have alerted them to the fact there's going to be a major disaster. At that point, we got a little bit closer. You could see how much worse it was, and then a tremendous explosion took place. That was the second plane hitting, but we didn't know it at the time. A tremendous explosion, and we thought that was in the same building. We were notified very quickly that a second plane had hit the other tower, and then we obviously knew it was terrorism. Obviously, we weren't going to have 2 airplanes that did this. We arrived at Park Place, which is north of the 2 towers, which is where the police department was beginning to set up a command post. Had selected a building, 75 Barclay Street, because they felt that the command center that we usually use was in jeopardy because it was right next to the Trade Center, and they were trying to evacuate that building. So I met there with my communications director, Sonny Mandel, Deputy Mayor Joe Loda. The police commissioner was there, Police Commissioner Carrick, the chief of the department, Joe Esposito, and they were bringing their communications van there. And I was trying to figure out where would be the best place to brief the press, because I remembered from the first World Trade Center disaster and the various drills that we've done that the most important thing is to communicate the correct information to the people inside the building. That we had to get on television, we had to get on radio, we had to tell them what to do. And probably what we were going to tell them was to get out of the building, use the stairways, because the stairways are safe. The stairways are fireproof, they should be smoke-proof, and it turned out they were. And then I said to but I wanted to join the fire department and the police department together at one command post. So I asked, where's the fire department command post? They said, it's over on West Street. So we began walking over toward West Street. My deputy mayor, Joe Loda, and at this point he was joined by two other deputy mayors, Bob Harding and Tony Coles. Joe told me that people were jumping out of the World Trade Center. And I looked up and I saw things coming out of the World Trade Center, but I wasn't sure that I was actually seeing people. When I got to West Street, one of the police officers told me, keep looking up just in case something is coming down so you can avoid it. Debris. So we were looking up. I could see the top of the World Trade Center, Tower number 1. And I think this is the first time I realized that this was something beyond anything we've ever experienced before. I saw a man just, might have been two floors from the top, meaning 102 stories up. I saw him just jump right out of the window. He wasn't on fire. He jumped out of the window and he came all the way down.
Making a choice between burning or suffocating?
I guess, yeah.
And what he thought was a chance.
And I followed him. I followed him all the way down to where he hit. And I see that, you keep seeing that in your mind.
Something you've replayed over and over.
Yeah, and something you thought you would never see. But now there are probably 1,000 things you thought you would never see after that.
If we could stop right there, we're going to take a quick break and let you continue your story. We're talking to Mayor Rudy Giuliani of New York, the man who addressed this crisis from the second it happened, has led this city and this nation through it for the last 2 weeks. We'll be right back. And we're back. We're talking to the mayor of New York. Mr. Mayor, you just talked about the harrowing notion of someone jumping out 100 floors, falling in front of you. You then continued your walk to the...
We walked to the fire department command post, which is the typical way the New York City Fire Department fights a fire. They set up a command post. They have a big board. The board outlines where the firefighters are that are fighting the fire or conducting the rescue. At that scene was the chief of the department, the highest uniformed officer in the fire department, Pete Gansey, Bill Feehan, who's the first deputy commissioner, and then we were joined by the fire commissioner. And I either overheard or asked questions about what was going on, and they basically what they said was that the firefighters had gotten up to about half, had gotten through about half the building, and had cleaned out about half of World Trade Center 1. I couldn't see World Trade Center 2 as well, because it's obscured somewhat. But they said number 2 is in worse shape and more difficult, because the plane hit lower in the building. They were confident they could get everybody out below the plane in World Trade Center 1. They said they think they had already gotten some people out above the plane who had actually been lucky enough to have a stairway that they could come down. But they were having a lot more trouble with 2. And that the message, because I was actually there to ask them, what should I say? What should I tell people? They said the message has to be, get in a stairway and come down. Do not stay there. That if anybody has a chance at all, they're going to have a chance by getting in the stairway and getting out. And the idea of a helicopter rescue was not feasible because of the flames and the smoke. Yeah. And if you put the helicopter there, the helicopter would have, gone on fire.
Yeah.
So the best thing was to get in the stairways, and the firefighters, basically tell them firefighters are in all the stairways. They're on their way to them. A lot of them probably will have already made contact with firefighters, and that ultimately they should get in the stairway, because if they get in the stairway, the firefighters are coming up and will join them.
Now, while you're thinking about rescuing the people who are directly affected, as the mayor, are you also thinking, this could be bigger than this? If they hit the Trade Center, maybe they're going for other targets?
Not yet.
Not yet.
The thought, I think I was too concerned at this point with what's the plan, so that I could communicate it. And at this point, although it was a terrorist incident, I think we were still treating it the way we treat a rescue or a fire. We're basically following all the steps that we normally follow in a rescue or a fire. And I think the fact that the fire department did that saved probably 25,000 lives. When we think about the enormous number of lives we've lost, potentially there were 25,000, 30,000 people that were in all those different buildings. and they evacuated probably about 25,000 in an orderly way. I then said to Pete Gansey, who was running the operation, I said, God bless you. Just sort of I shouldn't say matter-of-factly, but just as a way to say something of support to him. I said, God bless you. And he said, thank you, God bless you. And then he went back to what he was doing. I walked away, and I said, we'll go back to the police department command post where we can have communications. And I took my people with me. I asked my chief of staff, Tony Carbonate, to make sure the fire commissioner came with me because I needed him to get on television and radio and tell people what to do. And as I was walking away, about 10 steps away, I saw Father Michael Judge, who was one of the chaplains of the fire department, a very, very close friend, a Franciscan priest, and an absolutely great guy.
Wonderful man.
Who I met the first time way back in 1994 when I was just mayor 3 months, and we lost 3 firefighters, got burned in one night. And he stayed with us all night and ministered to them. And since then, he's been a very close friend and advisor. And I said to Father Judge, said very quickly, because he was going past very quickly, I said, pray for us. And he said, I always do. I had a smile on his face. He said, I always do.
That wonderful
Very
smile.
confident.
That
I always do.
smile.
And that's the last time I saw him. And he headed down toward the command center. We went to Barclay Street, 75 Barclay Street. Went inside the building that the police department had commandeered, essentially had taken it over. Set up some additional phone lines, got the phones working there. Sonny set up a place where the press was going to be briefed. And at that point, we called the White House. I talked to the Deputy Chief of Staff and told him what was going on and asked him and said, is there air cover? Do we have air cover? Because at this point now, as we were walking back, it occurred to us that there could be another attack, that this may not be it. There may be a lot more. So we got through the White House, asked for air cover. They told us that fighters had been dispatched 15 minutes earlier, so that there should be air cover already or very shortly. And at that point, I heard the Pentagon had been hit. And I asked if that were true, and they said yes, and that the White House was being evacuated. When we heard that, myself, the police commissioner, the first deputy police commissioner, chief of the department, my deputy mayors, then we were pretty certain at this point there were going to be more targets. If they had hit two World Trade Center buildings in New York City, they had hit the Pentagon already, what was next? And I was told that the vice president would call me. I got notified that the vice president was on another phone. I went to another office, and I picked up the phone, and I said, Mr. Vice President, because I was going to explain to him what was going on and again reiterate the need for air cover and for assistance, and the phone went out. And at that point, I heard, I believe it was Joe Esposito, the chief of the police department, say, the tower is coming down, or the tower has come down. The building started to shake, and you could hear the building being pelted with something. And then there was first dark outside, because we could see right outside. We were on the first floor.
From 75 Barclay Street.
From 75 Barclay Street, which is basically 2 blocks away from the World Trade Center, hidden by 7 World Trade Center,
right.
Which is the reason we're alive.
Right. 7
World Trade Center absorbed a lot of the damage, which is why it went down from the 2 towers going down. At that point, we decided we had to evacuate the building, that the phone lines were now out in the building. It seemed like the building was in great jeopardy, that it probably was going to come down. So we went down into the basement. One of the security people in the building, the police had already looked around. They got had a security person with them from the building. Said, let's go downstairs. There are 3 exits downstairs. We went to the first exit, and we couldn't get out. We went to the second exit, and he couldn't get it open. He said, then let's go back upstairs. We went back upstairs. We tried that exit. And now things outside were much worse. It was much darker. There seemed to be more debris, and that exit wouldn't open. We went back downstairs, and another security fellow came along and said, I'll take you through the exit that connects to the next building. And it'd probably be easier if we all go out through the other building, because it faces east, and you can go north, and you can move some some distance away from this. And he went to that exit door, he opened it up, and I think everybody with me, including me, had a great sense of relief when that door finally opened, because the others wouldn't open.
Did you think for a moment that you were trapped and may die?
I don't think at the time, and I've reviewed this with all the people who I did this with, I don't think at the time we realized how serious it was. We certainly knew it was serious. We wouldn't be exiting the building if we didn't know it was serious. But I don't think that we knew what it meant for the World Trade Center to collapse.
We're going to take a quick break.
Sure.
We'll be right back with a lot more of Mayor Rudy Giuliani. He is telling the story of what happened to his city, the capital of New York in so many ways, the capital of America in so many ways, New York City. We'll be right back. And we're back with Mayor Rudy Giuliani, the mayor of New York. He has, in his story, just left 75 Barclay Street after trying 3 different exits. You're now outside.
No, we actually got into the lobby of another building. What he had taken us into was the lobby of another building, 100 Park Place, very large lobby. I didn't know the jeopardy we were in, but I felt a lot of relief when we actually got out, with having more space rather than being in this basement. And when we got out, we looked outside, and it was, all you could see outside, because it was early in the day, it was all white. It was like clouds going back and forth. Something like when you grew up, when the era I grew up in, you would think a nuclear attack was like. Just this cloud, very, very massive, heavy white smoke. And then in the building walked one of the deputy police commissioners, and one of the people who used to be on my police detail, Tibor Karekis, who's one of the bravest, strongest guys you'll ever meet. I mean, a very, very strong, tough guy. He walked in, and he was all white and bleeding from the head, and obviously pretty well beaten up from the debris. We had to sit him down, and he said, "Things are terrible out there." And then there was a short debate about should we stay in the building because things were terrible out there, or should we get out of the building? And we decided we had to get out of the building because now at this point it appeared as if the building was going to come down. So we had to exit the building. And we remembered that if you go out, you go left, you go north, and that would take you away from at least what appeared to be the area it was coming down. So we exited the building, made a left, tried to all stay together, just reminded each other we should all stay together, and we started walking north. And now my mind turned to, where do we relocate city government? Where do we go? We need a headquarters. So I was thinking about going to City Hall, which is only 3 blocks away. And we started heading in that direction, and I was told that City Hall had been evacuated. And as I was told that, next thing I heard was that we heard an airplane overhead, and someone said, "We're being attacked again." Someone just yelled out, "We're being attacked again." And then someone else, I think one of the police officers, said, "No, it's one of ours." And that I remember registering at the time. Well, you didn't have much time to think. This is unreal. How could this be happening in New York or an American city? This is a military attack. That's one of ours. We have, and it turned out it was, and there was a great sense of relief that it was one of ours. It was either a Navy or an Air Force plane that was protecting the city. Right after that, the second building came down, and the debris got much worse, and we had to move out much quicker now because the debris was starting to get very close to us.
And it just blows through those canyons of New York.
Exactly what happened. It was coming through like again, it wasn't, but it was like what in your mind you think a nuclear attack is going to be like. So now I thought the next place that we could go would be the fire department on, I think it's on Reed Street, which is about 3 blocks away. We could go into that fire department, we get the telephones, we had some press with us. We get the press, we could start communicating and find out what should people do. My chief of staff, Tony Carbonetti, said, "You don't want to go to that fire department because it's right in the shadow of the federal building, and that is probably one of their targets." And it wasn't just one federal building, there were 2 federal buildings there and the federal courthouse. So we should really try to go to an area that doesn't have large buildings around, because who knows what they're going to hit next. We then got on the telephone to make sure that we were in contact with police headquarters. We couldn't get through to police headquarters. We tried the fire command post, could not get through to that. And then we decided that the best place to go was the firehouse right above Houston Street, because I remembered that firehouse, so did the fire commissioner, and it was large, and there'd be a lot of telephones there.
Now, are you still walking?
We're all on foot and trying to make connection on telephone.
Cell phones.
By cell phones. Not very successful, although you could get a few messages through. We finally got to the firehouse, and it was locked. And the fire department, which the mayor, the fire commissioner, the police commissioner couldn't get into the firehouse because it was locked. So one firefighter was going to break it open, another police officer was going to shoot it open, and finally they picked the lock and got us in. And then we set up a command post there for about 45 minutes, and we're able to make contact with the scene. We're able to reestablish that all of the commissioners should meet at the police academy, which is in Midtown Manhattan, a large facility where we could have space, room, and telephones, and then we could bring anybody that needed help or assistance, and we could bring the press there and try to find out as much as we could.
Well, if you could hold the story right there, you're now moving about 50-some blocks north of where the disaster occurred.
Correct.
We're going to take a quick break and resume your story. We're talking to Mayor Rudy Giuliani. He runs the city of New York, and he helped this country get through an extraordinary crisis. He's giving us a tick-tock of what exactly happened. We'll be right back.